They boarded to bring gold home, but on the SS Central America, there came a moment when the most valuable thing they carried became the very thing pulling them closer to death. In the rain, the darkness, and the swaying deck, gold was no longer hope. It was becoming a burden of survival. In 1857, America was still haunted by the California gold rush. Those leaving the West carried more than luggage. They carried the gold they believed would change their lives once they returned home. From California, they crossed through Panama and continued toward New York with wealth, hope, and their families' futures. For many aboard the ship, gold was more than money. It was years of sacrifice, a house not yet built, a family waiting on the far side of the journey. It was proof that the harsh years in California had meant something. No one imagined that the very thing they fought to keep would become the first thing they might have to let go. At first, no one believed this would be the storm that ended the voyage. It was only stronger wind, higher waves, and a sky growing darker by the hour. But at sea, disaster rarely arrives as a single sudden blow. It comes in small signs, until by the time people understand, their way back has already begun to disappear. Then the storm truly struck. Rain lashed the deck, wind tore through the rigging, and seawater began sweeping across the wooden planks. From that moment on, the SS Central America was no longer just a ship returning to New York. It had become a vessel fighting through the dark, not to be swallowed by the sea. But what truly robbed the SS Central America of its chance to survive was not only what happened above deck. As water began pouring below, it reached the place that kept the ship fighting the storm, the engine room. And from that moment on, the vessel's strength began to fade from the inside. Below deck, the struggle turned desperate. Water kept rising, steam thickened, the furnace light weakened, and the men in the engine room began to realize they could not hold the ship together much longer. The battle was no longer about keeping order. It was about delaying the moment the sea would finally win. On deck, the last silence finally broke. People clung to the rails, looked at one another through the rain, and began to understand that this ship might never carry them home. From that point on, fear was no longer a warning in the distance. It was there now, visible on every face in the storm. And it was here that gold began to change its meaning. What had once been labor, hope, and the promise of a future was becoming a weight no one could ignore. On a deck slick with rain and panic, holding on to that gold also meant holding on to one more burden while the ship itself was growing weaker. In that storm, gold was no longer just something people feared losing. It began to hinder every step, every attempt to keep balance, every chance to grab hold of something and survive. And that was the moment its value changed completely, from a symbol of hope into a burden that could cost a life. As the ship weakened, the truth grew crueler by the minute. Survival would not be possible for everyone. Lifeboats were limited. Every empty place meant a decision. And in that chaos, anything that made you slower, heavier, or more hesitant could steal away the last chance to live. And then the tragedy revealed itself most clearly. To live, people had to become lighter, faster, ready to climb into a lifeboat with emptier hands. The gold they had risked years to earn was now the very thing that could drag them down and keep them from the final chance of survival. In the end, gold was no longer the reward of the journey. It became something that had to be abandoned in exchange for even the smallest chance to survive. And in that moment, the tragedy of the SS Central America stood exposed. What they had fought so hard to bring home was what they could not keep. But not everyone still had time to let go and escape. As the ship gave out beneath the storm, the sea finally took what remained: the vessel, the gold, and hundreds of lives that never reached home. the SS Central America disappeared into the darkness, becoming one of the deadliest maritime disasters in American history. The SS Central America sank in the storm, but what made it such a haunting tragedy was not only the deaths or the gold that was lost. It was the cruel lesson it left behind. Some things become so precious that you can survive only by letting them go at the right moment.